Welcome in to this week's Start Sit Show brought to you by FTN Fantasy. I am your host, Jeremy Popielarz, who you can find on Twitter at PopesFFH. Um, and we're here to answer all your Start Sit questions. Feel free to hop in the chat. If you are on YouTube, you can go ahead and do that. If you are on Twitter, send your way over to the YouTube link that should be posted on the tweet that you clicked on. And that will send you over here to YouTube. You can then go ahead and put in the comments and ask your questions. That way I can pull it up on screen, make it a little bit easier to work through those questions for you. And until we get some questions to roll in, I'm going to hit you guys with the ads. You know what I'm saying? Not really ads, but at FTN Fantasy, FTNFantasy.com has all the tools that you possibly need. Multiple stats tools. You have everything from a start sit tool. We have rankings. We have a consensus rankings. So multiple people doing those. We have every stat known to man and our stats hub. Pretty much every advanced stat, any non-advanced stat you want, you can get that in there as well. So promo code at Pope, just Pope POPE, will get you 20% off the subscription. Get you access to all that stuff. So feel free to hop on over there if you aren't already a member. And until we get some questions rolling in here, I am going to go ahead. I can roll through some questions that we do see on Twitter. I am going to roll through some of an article I put out every Friday, which is the ECR versus our FTN ranked, which is our consensus versus the ECR consensus. Gives you an idea of a few people that our FTN rankers have a little bit higher or lower. So to start it off, there's one question here on Twitter. It's from BKG. Need a wide receiver: Lockett, Palmer, Sutton, and Pittman. Four pretty decent options here. Michael Pittman gets Pittsburgh this week. A little bit softer matchup. Cortland Sutton's a guy I'm probably going to avoid out of this group. He's the least ranked for me. Gets Carolina, not the toughest matchup, but I just don't trust Russell Wilson. I'm gonna roll with Josh Palmer here. Tyler Lockett's a good play, but the Raiders have been a little bit deceivingly good against wide receivers this season. They haven't been the best team in the NFL, but they're also not the worst when it comes to the wide receiver position as far as fantasy points given up to them. Additionally, the Raiders have also only given up, where are we at here? They've given up 18 top 48 wide receivers this season, but a majority of those, 12 of which came as 3 and wide receiver 4 performances. So I don't know if Lockett's going to have a huge day. They've only given up one wide receiver 1 so far this season for the Raiders. So I don't know if Lockett has a huge day. He could have a mediocre day, but I think Palmer has a upside there with no Mike Williams. I just think that's a decent matchup for the Chargers against Arizona. So I'm gonna roll with Palmer. I think that game could get a little bit higher of a shootout. So BKG, I'm gonna roll Palmer out of this group. BKG, that is your answer there. Let's see. We got one here that's Geno Smith versus the Raiders, or Derek Carr, Devontae Adams versus the Seahawks. I'm going to go with Derek Carr here. I like the stack. Also, again, the Raiders haven't been overly generous to the quarterbacks and or wide receivers. Raiders, they've given up a little bit more as far as quarterback play goes, but I'm not sold on Geno Smith having a huge day. So I'm going to go with Derek Carr. I just like the fact of the stack there, Kevin, on Twitter. Let's see here. We got one here from Brett Thunderstruck. Good morning. One big underdog after Thursday, half PPR, need 2 Evans, Olave, Pickens, Watson. Starting Rachaad White, and I'm worried about the weather for Evans, but maybe I'm overthinking it. I don't think you're overthinking it. I know the weather's supposed to be pretty nasty in Cleveland. I'm normally not one that necessarily looks a ton into the weather, but it could affect that deeper passing game, which is kind of where Mike Evans makes his hay. So I don't mind rolling out Olave and Pickens here. I mean, I'm obviously going to roll out Olave. I feel like he's a lock here. Olave's proved a lot to me over the course of his rookie season, and he doesn't have the toughest matchup. He doesn't have it's just an average matchup, but I feel like he's almost matchup proof at this point. San Francisco is going to be a little bit tough, but I think he still has a decent day. Pickens, I feel like Pickens' upside's a little bit lower than Christian Watson. I do think Pickens can find the end zone, but Indianapolis isn't the same defense that they have been of years past. But I don't necessarily trust Pittsburgh. I think Pickens finds the end zone. I just don't know if he has that huge upside. But I'm also really worried. I mean, Philadelphia's been a no-fly zone when it comes to wide receivers, and Aaron Rodgers hasn't been playing lights out as we have expected. But Watson, I think, has higher upside just because of all the touchdowns he's scoring. So if you're an underdog, I'm going to shoot high. I'd probably go Olave and Watson, even though I don't have them ranked that way. I just feel like those two have the highest upside. But you could also start Evans. I mean, like you said, you feel you're overthinking it, and if that's the case, I mean, go with your gut and go with Mike Evans. I think he has a high upside. I mean, he could catch 1 or 2 touchdowns today. I just don't know if you're going to see a high flying game there in Cleveland. I think you see a little bit of ground and pound. I think you see a lot of Rachaad White. I think you could see a lot of Godwin or Scotty Miller, those guys over the middle kind of. Evans will still see some of that work. He just tends to see a little bit more of that field stretching work. So, I mean, really up to you. I feel like you're shooting upside being an underdog, like I said. So I like Olave and Watson just because I think you could see a couple touchdowns out of Watson. So that's where I'm at. So I don't know if that really helps you, Brett. Tone has Ryan Cooper or Josh Palmer in the flex. Let's see what we got here. So I'm going to go. The weather kind of scares me a little bit with Amari Cooper now. I really liked Amari Cooper coming into the game. But like Brett had mentioned here, even with him too, you're worried about the weather affecting him a little bit. So I'm going to go Josh Palmer here. I know this will be the week that we start Josh Palmer and he gives us that dud, right? But I think I'm going to lean Palmer. It's really close with him and Amari Cooper. I do like Ryan. He's just not in the same stratosphere as these two for me. So I'm going to go Josh Palmer very slightly over Amari Cooper tone, but not a ton. So if you want to trust it, like I said, I really liked Amari Cooper coming into the week, and it would be a smash for me on Amari Cooper's side had the weather not been as bad as it is. So if you're not too concerned about the weather, like I said, the weather is a 50-50 thing. Either you're concerned or you're not. It just depends on how you play your fantasy games. So if you're not worried about weather, go Cooper. If you are worried about the weather, I'm perfectly fine playing Josh Palmer. I think he has a decent upside again this week without Mike Williams in there. Fernando, what is up? Setup's looking fire. Great work. Thank you, Fernando. Much appreciated. Tone also has Kamara, Rachaad White, Najee Harris, pick 2. I'm going to go White and Najee Harris. So I was in on Kamara most of the week as kind of a low-end RB2. Still kind of there, but Najee Harris, you don't have Jalen Warren tomorrow against Indianapolis. So I think Najee Harris, you're going to get back to that workload that we saw last year. He's going to see a lot of work. Benny Snell will probably see some touches here and there, but I'm in on Najee Harris. He might find the end zone in that game. Rachaad White, I think you're going to see a lot of them against Cleveland today. A mix between him, Giovanni Bernard, and stuff like that. But I think they're ready to give Rachaad White some of the reins here. He was already taking over for Fournette prior to the bye. Coming out of the bye, rookie wide running backs tend to have a little bit more work. And Fournette is out this week. So I'm in on White and Harris here for you, Tone. Corey, favorite stream. Much appreciated. Thank you. Heineke, Tannehill, Matt Ryan, and Brissett. I don't know how many you're picking. I'm going to say it's 2 just because you have 4 quarterbacks. Either that or this is a stream question. I'm going to say... All right. I like Tannehill. I'm a little bit higher on him than like the consensus was at, and even at FTN. I mean, they get Cincinnati. I think that game they're going to be forced to throw it a little bit more than they want to. And he had a pretty good game last week. So I'm probably going to go that route. I like Heineke against Atlanta too. I have him back-to-back, but it would probably be one of those two. Matt Ryan, Pittsburgh's not overly great, but I don't necessarily think that he's going to have a huge day. I think Pittsburgh can be ran on. I think you're going to see a lot of Jonathan Taylor tomorrow. Brissett, bad weather. I'm not in on him as much this week. So I'm going to roll with Tannehill here. I think that he has another good game. And like I said, Cincinnati, they haven't been overly friendly to quarterbacks. As opposed to, say, Atlanta, who's been much more friendly. Atlanta's given up 7 QB1 performances, as opposed to Cincinnati, who's only given up 1. All right, I changed my mind. Go Heineke. Let's go with it. I think Heineke against Atlanta, good matchup. Like I said, they've given up 7 quarterback 1 performances, 3 QB2 performances, 10 total top 24 for quick math. I think he could be a good stream. I think it's a little bit safer to give you at least a QB2 finish, a higher end QB2 there. So I'm going to go with Heineke in his first start as kind of a Corey 1. Yeah. No, you're good, Corey. No problem. You don't have to apologize. But I'm going to go Taylor Heineke, like I mentioned. A little bit softer matchup. Brett's got Cooper, Watson, or Cooks in full PPR. I really hate to pivot off of Amari Cooper. I know the weather's going to be really nasty there, but I mean, I've liked Cooper the last couple of weeks. I liked him last week, and he blew up. This matchup against the Tampa Bay secondary is really good for him. I just worry that they go back to that ground and pound, but Tampa's hard to run on, and they might be forced to throw it even in the worst weather. Watson against the Philadelphia secondary, I'm not too keen on. Brett, I mentioned it earlier. I mean, the upside's there for Christian Watson, so like I lean that route if you're looking for the upside. I'm out on Cooks. I'm not even going to entertain that. I mean, Kyle Allen's starting now. I mean, I don't know exactly where that Houston team's going against Miami. I'm just going to avoid that situation at the moment. So I'm probably going to go... I'm going to lean Cooper here. Like I said, I had him all week leading up as like a top 10 guy. The weather's now a little bit nasty. I don't know if he gets us to that top 10 again. But I think he could be a safe wide receiver to finish this week, where Christian Watson, much more risk involved there. Unless he finds the end zone, he really doesn't have a ton of value. He doesn't produce a ton of yardage. He's very low volume wise kind of in that offense at the moment, but he's just scoring touchdowns. That's what's keeping his fantasy afloat, but he's just scoring them at such a click that it's hard to ignore. So, but I'm going to go Cooper. I think he's a little bit more involved. I think that they might be forced to throw it a little more than they want, and he should have a decent day. If you really want to shoot the upside, though, Watson has it. It's just that Philadelphia secondary scares me more than the weather in Cleveland. Fernando, question: would you rather start Pierce or Gibson? I'm still rolling with Dameon Pierce. Again, like I just mentioned with Brett's question, Kyle Allen under center is a little bit different than Davis Mills. Probably not as much as we would think, but there's going to be somewhat of a difference there in that offense. So I think you're going to see a little bit more Dameon Pierce. But I do have Gibson right there, honestly. I like Gibson this week against Atlanta. Another softer matchup for him. He's been the more productive fantasy running back out of that Washington backfield. So for me, I'm going to go with Gibson, especially with Heineke in there. He tends to kind of target those guys. So for me, that's where I'm going to go. So I'm going to go Pierce still, Fernando. So ride it. I know it's been an up and down thing, but I think he's a pretty good lock to have a decent day. Probably not a big day, but a decent day. Love Pierce and Gibson, so hyped to grab them in rookie drafts. So both came out. I feel you. I honestly didn't like either of them, if I'm going to tell you the truth. I wasn't huge on both of them coming out. They both got that similar third round draft capital, which is concerning as a longevity. We've seen it with Antonio Gibson when you're playing Dynasty, but right now both are really good fantasy assets. So prove me wrong. So, I'll eat it when I have to. So let's see here. Larry has, should I start Hollywood? I'm going to. I guess it depends on who you're starting him over, Larry. But I think that Hollywood, you almost feel like Hollywood could have went last week. I feel like from the reports went, and they kind of just held him out because he was just not ready. So I'm assuming that Hollywood's going to be a little bit more healthy. It's not one of those issues where he's coming off an injury, obviously, but it's not one of those where it's like, oh, he's questionable leading in. And it's kind of like, oh, he might go, he might not go. It seems like Hollywood's kind of been, for most of the week here, the latter half, it's kind of been like, oh, Hollywood's probably going to play. He's going to play. He looks good. He's healthy. So I'm assuming he's healthy. And with that, with no Greg Dortch and or Rondell Moore, I do think that Hollywood Brown, again, I mentioned it earlier, against the Chargers, I think that there could be a little bit more passing in that game. And I think Hollywood gets targeted. I think that he could possibly have a big touchdown or something of a deep touch type shot that helps you out a little bit there in the box score. So I would, obviously, Larry, if you're trying to start him over, I don't know. Justin Jefferson already played, but like AJ Brown, probably not. But in that middle class tier where he's around players like that, yeah, I'd start him. Larry, you are welcome, and I'm hoping he has a big day, decent day, So I think that he's in due. Biggest bust this year, Davis Mills. Not sure if you knew that I was on that train since last year. Yeah, I liked Davis Mills. Fernando, I wouldn't say that he's kind of a bust. I never expected him as a long-term option. But I would say a decent bust of as in I thought he was going to be a productive QB2 this year, and he really hasn't become that. So it's unfortunate. I liked him coming out. I thought he could have been one of those guys that if he got a shot, he could kind of hold on to it, which he did for a sec. Just not fully catching on yet. So Twitter, Todd has a question. I picked up Foster Moreau. I have Tunyon now and Devontae Adams also. Is there enough targets for both of them in this offense? Yes, there is. I do think Moreau and Adams can coexist, especially with no Waller, and especially this week. The Seahawks have been really, really light, we'll say. We use that word, to production from the tight end position. They're one of the most, let's see, what is the exact number? I think they've given up 15 or 18, is it? Let me check. It is, where are they? There they are, 7. Yeah, they've given up 10 total top 24 tight end positions, 7 of which came as a tight end 1. So for me, Seattle this week is a good matchup for Foster Moreau. Not so much for Adams. They're a little bit tougher against the wide receivers. Let's see what else we got here on Twitter. JTA on Twitter. I need 2 to start: Rashad White, Chris Olave, or David Montgomery. I'm going to go White and Olave, although I still like Montgomery for a top 30 finish at the running back position. I think White has a higher upside and a full workload against Cleveland in what's going to be kind of a rainy game. So I'm going to lean Rachaad White there, JTA. Olave against the 49ers, tougher matchup. But I think he has enough work there. David Montgomery against the Jets, another one. It's a tough matchup. The Jets have been pretty good against running backs as far as that goes. So I'm not sold on that, especially with Trevor Siemian at quarterback, aside from Justin Fields. Like I said, the Jets have only allowed 2 RB1 finishes. They've had 6 RB2s, so it's likely that he falls into that low-end RB2, high-end RB3 category for David Montgomery. So I'm not going to shoot with that. I think Olave has a top 15 upside, as well as Rachaad White. So I'm going to shoot that route. I'm going to go the upside route there for you, JTA. Let's see what else we got here. Fernando also has, I had the hope he would be like a QB14. He needs weapons, Cooks, just like, yeah, I get it. I mean, I guess you could definitely say that's a bust there if you're thinking he's going to be QB14, Fernando, but I was more in that like lower echelon QB2s, 15 and beyond. So, I mean, we were close. Like you said, though, the weapons, the offensive line, he's not a guy that's going to go out there and win you the game himself. Like you said, some weapons, stuff like that would definitely help him. But I think unfortunately, it's going to be replaced this year with the really good quarterback class coming out. So Eric on Twitter has 2 leagues, Flex PPR, ETN, McLaurin, Latavius Murray. We also have, so out of that situation, I'm going to roll with McLaurin. I like both ETN and Murray somewhat this week. I'm a little bit less on Lat Murray than the rest of the consensus, but I'm still going to go McLaurin. ETN against Baltimore, he could have a huge day, but there's a lot of risk involved. Baltimore's been pretty good, especially with Roquan Smith now there against running backs, so I'm not sold there. McLaurin against Atlanta is a good matchup, so I'm going to go there with Taylor Heineke. I think he could have a decent day. We also have running back and a flex, full PPR, Dameon Pierce, Rachaad White, Lat Murray, and Ayuk. I'm going to definitely go White here for you, Eric. And then I'm going to go Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk's been on a tear as of late. He is going to meet a weakened New Orleans secondary at the moment. And I think he could find the end zone again like he did here the last couple weekends. So, Larry, YouTube. Sorry, one more question. Again, Larry, no apologies needed. That's what I'm here for. Ask away. You could ask 5 more. I don't care. We got until 12:30, 1 o'clock. So, to get Hollywood off my R spot, I need to drop either Deontay Johnson or Jacoby Myers. Ooh. I'm gonna drop DJ. Sounds crazy. If you would have been telling me this 5 weeks ago, I would have been like, "You're nuts." But DJ's kind of not really their guy at the moment. It seems like George Pickens has taken that role over. DJ sees some work, but he's just more risky. Jacoby Myers has a role in that offense. He is kind of their wide receiver 1. He's coming off an injury. He didn't have the biggest game last week, but he's had his big games. He's averaging I think he's a top 15 wide receiver still on points per game average. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I do believe he's right in that area. So I'm going to hold on to Jacoby, especially if it's full PPR. And I'll drop Deontay Johnson unless there's somebody else. But it sounds like you have maybe a little bit of a shallower roster or something like that. So I would probably go DJ. He just hasn't been that productive lately. Caesar's got one. Hey, man, PPR league, Montgomery, Rachaad White, or Jeff Wilson. Then in another league, pick 2. So we'll just go with the first one first, and we'll ring back there to the second one, Caesar. I'm going Jeff Wilson. Montgomery's my lowest ranked out of these guys. I think against the Jets, it's going to be an issue. I just don't think he had a huge day, so I'm not really sold there. Rachaad White, I do like against Cleveland. But Jeff Wilson against Houston. Houston's one of the worst teams against the running backs at the moment. They've given up the most points per game to running backs. In addition to that, they've also given up 6 RB1 finishes and 4 RB2 finishes. So 10 within the top 24 over the last 11 weeks. So I am in on Houston and that Jeff Wilson matchup without Raheem Mostert there. So I'm going to go with Wilson. I have him actually as a top 12 option this week. So I'm going to go there. And then in your other PPR league, pick 2, Hollywood Brown, Terry, and Godwin. I'm going to go Brown and Terry. I like the matchup for Terry against Atlanta. I think that's a good game there. Heineke's really been targeting him a lot more than Carson Wentz has, so I'm in on that. And Hollywood, I'm going to go with just because I'm going to avoid the weather with Chris Godwin here. Not that the weather necessarily makes me ignore Godwin. I do think he could have the best day of any of the Tampa wide receivers, just because of the routes and the general involvement that he has in a bad weather game. He's kind of that short PPR type guy. So he could have a decent day. But Hollywood, we're not going to have to deal with the weather. You're going to be in what I think could be a shootout against the Chargers. So I'm going to go Hollywood Brown there. No Dortch, no Rondell Moore. Kind of really no Zach Ertz. The options are limited there for Kyler Murray. So I think Hollywood and DeAndre Hopkins could have big days today. So I'm going to go with those 2 there for you, Caesar. All right. Larry, perfect. You are welcome. Fernando got to run. Get ready for today's games. No problem. Thank you, Fernando. I appreciate the support. Good luck. Yeah, I'm going to need some of that. I know I have some mostly dynasty leagues, so I have some teams that need as much help and good wishes as I can get this holiday season. So TR on Twitter, tough spot for ETN this week. Could see benching him for Debo, Waddle, or Lat Murray. So TR, I'm going to say I'm definitely not benching ETN for Lat Murray. I know he's had decent weeks the last couple of weeks, but there's not a ton of upside in there, as much as ETN's, in my opinion. I know it's a tough matchup against Baltimore, but in all honesty, Baltimore again, they're fairly stout. Roquan Smith is definitely helping them, but they have given up 13 top 36 wide receivers this season, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, tied for 4th most in the NFL. Now, a majority of these have come as RB2 finishes. So I'm not expecting like that high end upside from ETN, but I do think he could have an RB2 finish. So I'm not like totally out on him. Waddle's a little concerning. Houston's actually 4th or giving up the 4th least amount of points per game to wide receivers this year for fantasy. Now, Waddle and Tyreek Hill are a different animal. It's not your general wide receiver out there, but I could see him having a little bit less of a day. So I'm honestly still just going to I think I'm still going to give it to ETN. I mean, I'm just not as concerned about the matchup as I would say for Murray against Carolina, who's been decent, and he's not overly as talented as ETN. Waddle against Houston, a little bit tougher. Debo against New Orleans is interesting. That's probably would be the only one I would make that jump from ETN to Debo for. Allen or Palmer in GPP. I'm gonna I don't know exactly where they're priced, but I'm gonna go Palmer here. I think he could honestly have another big day like last week. I think Allen's still coming off that hamstring. I think he could have a decent day. But I think Palmer is going to see that benefactor of having Keenan Allen out there. He might draw the harder coverage, the better coverage. So Palmer will get even easier coverage, which we've seen him take advantage of, especially last week. So I'm going to go Palmer here for you. Benny, what is up? So let's see. Slightly still for me. And new guy, you are welcome. Hopefully it pays off. Maybe thank me later. How about that? Let's see what we got here. Todd on Twitter, PPR, need one running back, one flex out of these. Aaron Jones, Samaje Perine, Christian Kirk, and Olave. I'm going to go Aaron Jones and Kirk here. I like Olave and Kirk as the options here, Todd, for you at flex. But I think Kirk against Baltimore is a little bit better of a matchup than Olave against San Francisco. And I think we could see a nice Trevor Lawrence day. So I'm going to go there. And AJ, I know Aaron Jones is a little bit scary against Philadelphia, but we saw Washington put up a good run game against him. So I'm not really sold that defense is as bad as we think it's going to be. So I'm going to go that route. We got a defensive question: Ravens or Colts? I think I'm going to go Colts. It's really a toss-up. I think the Jaguars are a little bit better today than the Steelers will be tomorrow. So I'm going to go with the Colts D here for you, Kevin. I don't love either. But that's where I'm at. Alrighty. Let's see here. We got another one on here. Who would you start must-win matchup? Samaje Perine or Paris Campbell? I'm going Perine here. I like what Campbell's done. I know he's got a little bit of a better matchup. As opposed to Perine against Tennessee, but Tennessee's actually been pretty leaky against pass-catching running backs, and Perine's kind of taken that role. Now he's obviously going to see a full workload, but he's still going to have that pass-catching out of the backfield role. No Jamar Chase, so I could see them leaning towards Perine a little bit more, seeing a little bit more work. Possibly, it seems easy for me to see him get to 15 points. 40 yards on the ground, nothing crazy because it's good rush defense. But you see him get 5 targets, 5 catches, something like that, 20 yards and a touchdown. I mean, you could easily see him Perine getting to 15 points this week. So I'm kind of in on Perine a little bit higher than the rest of the consensus. Let's see what we got here. Let's see. Thanks for all your help. Guys helped me win last week. Brett, you are welcome. Love to hear that. That's my goal. Is to help you guys win. So it makes me feel better than when I win because I hardly win. You know what I'm saying? No, not really. Let's see. That was a joke. I do win occasionally, but Brett, I am very thankful that my advice helped you win. Larry, one last one: Perine or Josh Palmer? Ooh. I'm still going to lean Palmer. I think the upside's a little higher. I do think Perine, like I said, could get 10, 15 points. It's an easy route. I can see him getting there. But I can also see him being a complete bust where maybe they use Chris Evans today or they just avoid targeting the running back. So I'm going to go with Palmer. I think he has the higher upside. We saw it last week, with at least Allen or Mike Williams active, it seems like Palmer kind of is the better option than when they're both out. It just seems like maybe he does better against that little bit softer coverage of it as opposed to the top corner of the other team. So I'm going to go Palmer. I think he just has more upside for you there. What is up, Edward? Full PPR start to Jeff Wilson, Rashad White, Godwin, and Kamara. So I like Jeff Wilson's matchup. He's a must start for me. I have him as a top 12 guy this week against Houston. They give up the most points per game to running backs at the moment. And Jeff Wilson's been on a tear since joining Miami. He should see a majority share with no Raheem Mostert. I'm sure you'll see some Salvin, Ahmed. You might see some Gaskin. Yeah, you might see somebody. You might roll some extras in there, but I think Jeff Wilson sees a majority of that work. So I do think that he has a big day. And I'm going to go Rashad White. I do like Godwin here as well. The weather's a little bit nasty in Cleveland today, but Godwin kind of plays that shorter intermediate type area of field. I could see Brady definitely targeting him a decent amount today. So I could see some upside there in Chris Godwin, but I do think that they're going to run the ball a lot. They had mentioned it. We saw it against Seattle. I mean, White was kind of taking over the Leonard Fournette role. Now he gets another week outside of the bye. This tends to be the weeks that you start to see these rookie running backs kind of take over. And it sounds like the coaching staff's ready to give him that role. Cleveland can be ran on. We have seen it. We saw some pretty big days from Devin Singletary and others against this Cleveland rushing defense. So for me, that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go White and Wilson, favor the running backs. I think just in the conditions and everything, I think they could have some pretty big days. I think you could see White even score 2 touchdowns, have one of those breakout type games coming from Rashad White and Jeff Wilson this week. An FC7F, pick 2 PPR, Keenan Allen, James Conner, Christian Kirk. I'm in on James Conner here. So I do think that he could have a big day. I mentioned it earlier when we we're talking about Hollywood Brown, but you have no Dortch and no Rondell Moore. That short intermediate guys that they tend to like get the ball into their hands pretty quick. I think Conner could be that. They obviously cut, Benjamin. You do have Kootenai Ingram there kind of behind him, but I think we could see that James Conner type role that we saw at the back half of last year where he kind of sees a majority of the share. Decent check down stuff, small, quick, get it out of his hands, let him do his work. Definitely scoring touchdowns as well on a high volume passing offense. I do like Conner a lot there. As far as Allen versus Kirk, I lean Keenan Allen just on the basis of a better offense. And in that same game against Conner, I think you could see a little bit more of that high flying type of action. But I do think Kirk could have a big day. So I'm going to go Keenan Allen and James Conner, but I still do like Christian Kirk, MC. So I really feel like whoever you like over Allen and Kirk is who I would go with, but definitely start Conner and then just pick between one of those two. I think that they have equal upside. But I like Keenan Allen just like a smidge more. All right. So that would be my route, Allen and Conner. Let's see what we got here. Anything else on here? We got one on Twitter. Thank you. I appreciate it. Do you believe Higbee will end up playing? I do think Higbee plays. So. We got one here from a new guy. Do you think Giovanni Bernard will take away from some of White's touch? Yeah, I think that they do involve him. I'm not going to say that he takes a ton. I mean, we could see that, but we saw it even White didn't have a ton of touches against Seattle, still had a pretty big day on the ground. So I think they're ready to give Rashad White more touches. I think that game really helped them push that over the edge. He gets his bye week. I think they're ready to let him kind of see the majority. Obviously, if he fumbles or there's an issue, Rashad White could see him get toned back for the likes of Giovanni Bernard or Keyshawn Vaughn. But I think it's White's backfield to lose at the moment. So I do think he sees some touches. I don't think it's going to be 100% Rashad White, but I do think it's going to be a majority Rashad White. So, but not enough, honestly, if you're thinking about starting Giovanni Bernard. I'm not like even close to that, even as a flex. I mean, it could be there, but I do see what you're saying as far as like maybe limiting some upside from White. But I don't think it's going to be enough that it steers me away from thinking Rashad White has a big day. Bedbugs has the Muth or Kittle full PPR. So I am going to lean Pat Freiermuth. He's kind of become that second target there for the Pittsburgh offense behind George Pickens. Additionally, Indianapolis has given up the 6th most top 24 finishes to tight ends. Majority of these came as tight end 1 performances, as well as they've had 6 and 4 tight end 2. So for me, Indianapolis, you can funnel through the tight end position, and Pittsburgh likes to target that position. Freiermuth is a very talented tight end, so I'm going to go Freiermuth over Kittle there for you. New Orleans, a little bit tougher against tight ends. I know it's George Kittle, but they're a tougher matchup. So both, I think, are equally talented. Easier matchup for Muth. So that's where I'm going to go bedbugs. Let's see here. Any other questions on Twitter? Does not look like it. And you are welcome, bedbugs. No problem. I'm here to answer questions. If you got more, send them. Let's see here. Doesn't look like we have any other questions on Twitter. Let's see. Let's pull up. It is 11:42, so we should be seeing some inactives. So let's see what we got. If we have any, we do. All right. So we'll start it out with Atlanta. One more from Bedbug. So we'll answer that before we talk about the inactives. Likely don't mean much. Kirk or Miles Sanders? Christian Kirk. Pretty easy for me. I like Kirk against Baltimore. Easier in the secondary. They've been getting a little bit better, but pretty easy on the secondary. I think that T-Law and Kirk could have a decent day, as well as ETN. I think that game kind of turns into a little bit of a slugfest. And I think that, could see in that those both teams scoring in the 20s. So I think Kirk could find the end zone once or twice. Sanders against Green Bay, I'm not as in love with. Miles Sanders is just so hot and cold, and it just seems like at the moment he's in that cold stretch. So I'm going to go with Kirk. I think he's got a little bit more upside than Miles Sanders. So inactives, Falcons, Cornell Armstrong, a corner. Not a lot missing kind of on the more inactives are on the defensive side of the ball. Nothing overly crazy. Still think I like a lot of the Commanders options as flex plays and starts. Ravens, Mike Davis inactive. Tells you a lot. I mean, we're going to see a lot of Gus Edwards and Kenyon Drake. No Isaiah Likely, who doesn't really see much with Andrews active, so nothing crazy there. Carolina, missing some safeties. So that could possibly help a little bit there for the Denver's pass catchers, but still not sold there. The Bears, so Justin Fields is inactive. So if you do have Justin Fields in and have not seen this yet, Fields is inactive, so get him onto your lineups. Also kind of just kills a lot of the Bears playmakers. I mean, maybe Montgomery becomes a decent flex type player, but I'm not getting overly excited about David Montgomery now. None of the wide receivers really against that Jets secondary, and not even really Cole Kmet either. So kind of just makes it David Montgomery, and that's about it for the Bears. Bengals, Jamar Chase will miss. Joe Mixon out, which we expected. So again, P. Ryan, I like him. Good option. I think T. Higgins could have a pretty big day as the lead guy against that weak secondary. Deep guy, Trenton Irwin. We saw him have a decent day last week. Again, a weak secondary. You could see that. Hopefully Tyler Boyd gets on his horse as well this week and has a big day. Cleveland, nothing crazy. Newsom is out again. Missing Winovich. Outside of that, pretty normal there in Cleveland. Nothing too crazy. So, Benjamin is inactive again for the Houston Texans. So nothing overly exciting there. Outside of that, Breven Jordan out again. Nothing crazy there. The Jaguars, Darrell Henderson is going to be inactive in his first week after getting picked up. Not that many of us were planning on starting him, but Jermichael Hasty could have some workload there for the Jags if you're looking for a deep flex. Miami, Raheem Mostert is inactive. Not really a surprise. We were kind of expecting that. He came in doubtful. So now he's officially out. Let's see here. Do we have... let's see here. New England, Jets. So the Jets are missing Tony Adams, Bryce Hall, Sheldon Rankins. James Robinson is inactive for the Jets. That feels like it's kind of out of left field. Do I know that? Yeah. So James Robinson is inactive today. So if you had him slated in as a flex, no more. He is actually inactive. It's gonna bump up Michael Carter for me, as well as Ty Montgomery. Becomes an interesting option, especially with not Ty Montgomery, wrong Ty. Ty Johnson becomes a interesting flex for me. He could see some workload there in the passing game, especially without James Robinson. That's pretty surprising. I did not see that coming. So we have that one. Let's see here. So Russell Gage, Leonard Fournette, Kyle Rudolph, all out for Tampa. Tennessee, nothing crazy. And nothing crazy for the Commanders. Chase Young's out. Kind of expected. So the biggest one is going to be that James Robinson inactive for the Jets. Also, obviously, we have Fields is out, which we kind of were expecting at this point. But it's made official now that he will miss this week. So TSB, howdy. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to you. Need one flex, Patterson or Rashad White. Keep up the great work. I will try to keep up the great work. Keep the questions coming. That can help me. You know what I'm saying? But Rashad White, that's where I'm going to go here. I think he sees a majority workload in a game that's supposed to be kind of messy weather there in Cleveland. And I mentioned it. He's been a pretty hot topic earlier today, too. He's due for that lead work role for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know Giovanni Bernard is active. However, he's not going to see a ton of workload, I don't think. I think you're going to see a majority lean towards Rashad White. And I think that he could find the end zone once, possibly twice this week, and have a pretty big day. Could be kind of one of those coming out parties. Rookie running backs tend to have good weeks after their bye. So I'm in on that right there for you. So go Rashad White over Cordero Patterson. So, like I said, it's pretty surprised. I'm still a little bit in that shock of James Robinson being inactive. Definitely bumps Michael Carter too. So if you have any questions with Michael Carter, I would lean his way against the Bears, especially with that news there with Michael Carter being inactive. Let's see here. Let's see if we got any questions here on Twitter. Doesn't look like we have a ton. Let's see right. Doesn't look like we have any questions on Twitter. So I'm going to quote unquote pivot. I'm going to go. Oh, we got one here from David Rodriguez. Pirine or Kareem Hunt? I'm going to go Pirine. Again, the Tampa Bay defense is really stout against the run. I know that Cleveland is kind of their own animal there when it comes to their run game, but Hunt's been very ineffective against even easier matchups as of late. Kind of seems like it's Nick Chubb's backfield more so than ever at this point. So I don't love that. P. Ryan's got that full workload. I know it's a little bit tougher matchup against Tennessee, but like I had mentioned, they've actually given up the most receptions and targets to running backs this season. So for me, I'm leaning towards the P. Ryan side. I don't know if he's going to have a huge day, but I do think he could get you that low end RB 2 type numbers, that 10 to 15 range out of P. Ryan. Where Kareem Hunt, I really don't know if you're even going to get to 8, if I'm being honest. So that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go with P. Ryan. And okay, best value tight end. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't really checked the price points at the moment. A guy that I do like a little bit is Juwan Johnson this week. I know he's got a little bit of a tougher matchup against San Francisco, but he's been pretty consistent the last couple weeks. Finding the end zone is almost in an impromptu secondary wide receiver in that offense for the Saints behind Chris Olave. So I kind of like him a little bit this week. I think he could have not a huge day, but a little bit of a surprising day. Hayden Hurst is probably a guy. Noah Fant, another one that I don't hate either. Would probably be my options there. Dave, thanks. You are welcome. That is what I'm here for. If you have any more, toss them over. Lee's got it. Another one, Debo or Christian Watson, half PPR, and Monroe or Higbee. So we're going to know closer. I know Higbee's questionable at the moment. I do believe he plays, and if he does, I like him. But with Bryce Perkins, it's a little concerning. So I might actually just go Foster Moreau. Honestly, just avoid that questionable. I know it's a good matchup against Kansas City, and he could have a big day, but I just don't know. We haven't seen a lot of Bryce Perkins to know exactly where he's going to go or where he's going to look necessarily for his guy. I feel like Higbee's going to be that just because of all of the injuries around, especially with no Allen Robinson going today. But Foster Moreau feels a little bit safer against the Seattle team that gives up a lot of points to tight ends. They've given up 10 total top 24 finishes, majority of which 6 have come as tight end top 12 finishes. So I'm going to go with Moreau, who I think has a safe top 12 option this week. I think Higbee has a little bit maybe higher upside, but he also could definitely just give you a big goose egg just because I don't know exactly what Bryce Perkins' offense is going to look like here for the Rams. So I'm going to kind of just avoid that situation, especially with them being questionable as well. As far as Debo and Christian Watson go, I'm going to go Debo. I'm going to take the talent a little bit more. I know Watson's not untalented, but Debo's proven. He has a good matchup against New Orleans. That secondary is pretty banged up. So I'm going to go that route. Christian Watson against Philly. I think Philly could kind of shut him down. So I'm not going to go crazy there and try and get too fancy. I'm just going to roll with the talent with Debo and Moreau. Okay. Tom, Debo being banged up, Debo, Hollywood Brown, or Pacheco, or Latavius Murray and flex. Man, you have a good situation to be on, but also one of hard ones. They always say that, what a great situation. You got all these talented players, but it makes it harder to pick, right? I get it, Tom. I know where you're at. Man, that's a tough one. I like the matchup for Debo, like I just mentioned to Lee. Pacheco, Pacheco is hard to avoid at the moment, but I kind of am. I know he had a big day last week. It just seems like he doesn't get those prime touches in the red zone to really push him overboard. I feel like he's like a 10-point guy, and that's about it, and that's if he hits 100 yards. it's tough right now for Pacheco just because of that backfield. And it seems like McKinnon kind of is the guy in the red zone. So at the moment, I'm kind of avoiding him. I know this could be kind of one of his breakout games. Latavius Murray's kind of the same way. I feel like he's like a 10 to 13 point kind of dud. Like, okay, yeah, I'm going to get that, but I don't have a ton of upside, especially against the Carolina defense. That's pretty good against the run. So if you want to get fancy and kind of risk it, I'd go Hollywood Brown, but I'm probably just going to play Debo. I know he's banged up, but against New Orleans, missing Lattimore, it's a good matchup for him. I think he could have a decent day as well. So I'm going to probably roll Debo, just feeling a little bit safer, but the only guy I'd pivot to would be Hollywood Brown. Tootsie Pop, what is up? We got Treylon Burks or Miles Sanders. I'm going to risk the upside of Burks. I don't know exactly where your roster's at. I know Cincinnati's not the easiest matchup, but he did have a pretty big game last week. So I'm going to go with Burks here over Sanders. I don't love the matchup against Green Bay, and Sanders has been too boom or bust for me. I mean, Burks is too, but even the upside of Sanders, I feel like it's a touchdown and 50 yards. So it's not like, I don't think we're going to see him have a huge game against what seems like a good matchup with Green Bay because they can be ran on, but I don't know if we're going to get that out of Sanders. So I'm going to roll with Burks here for you. David, Julio Jones or Lazard? I'm going to say no. I'm going to shy away from the weather. I know it's a tough matchup for Lazard against Philly, but Julio is just if he doesn't score, Julio's not going to be helpful to you. I know Gage is out, so Julio is going to be kind of like that impromptu wide receiver 3. But there's a good chance he could possibly get hurt. We're not going to count on that, but it seems like that's kind of how he's been going. And he really has to score a touchdown to be relevant. So I'm going to go with Lazard. I think he's just a little bit more involved in that offense. So that's the route I'm going to go there for you, Dave. Christian Watson or DPJ, half PPR. I'm going to go Watson. I do like Donovan Peoples-Jones. Let's go DPJ. I know the weather's not going to be great. I'm going to actually go DPJ, though. I think that the Tampa Bay defense is a little bit easier to pass on. I think they're going to be forced to pass more than they want to, even though it's bad weather, just because the run defense is really good in Tampa. So I'm going to go that route. Christian Watson, a little bit touchdown dependent, but Philly's a really tough matchup. So I'm not sold on him continuing this high-end touchdown upside that he's been giving us the last couple of weeks. And not to say that he's due to not have it, but it's kind of how I feel. I feel like he's due to kind of not have that touchdown this week in what's a little bit of a tougher matchup. So I'm going to go DPJ, even though it's a little bit riskier. Lewis, good morning. Morning to yourself. Robinson or Marquise Brown, full PPR? I'm going to go I'm going to go Brown. I want to kind of lean Robinson. I really like him this week. I feel like he was the fit for Bateman. Like, I was a little bit early on him. He had some bad weeks after I was all like, yeah, Robinson. But he came out, had a good week last week, a lot of targets. I think that's going to be a repeat. So I do really like him. I just feel like Brown also is going to have a good day. So I'm going to go Robinson. I'm going to take my gut here. I was in on Robinson. I feel like he's that replacement for Rashad Bateman. I think the Jaguars can be passed on. And I do think this game's a little bit closer than most expect it to be. So I'm going to go that route. I think DeMarcus Robinson has a pretty big day. So I'm going to go with DeMarcus Robinson here, Lewis, over Marquise Brown, and kind of avoid the worry that he might not be full go after the injury. Finn Storm, Debo or Evans, PPR, Cleveland weather. Yeah, I'm going to go Debo. I probably would have went Debo anyways. Mike Evans has been slowly sliding down my rankings the last couple weeks, just because it seems like Chris Godwin's kind of become the main target. Evans sees some work here, but unless Evans finds the end zone, he's kind of been having some very meh weeks as of late. So I'm going to go with Debo just because, again, that weather even makes Evans even less appealing to me. So I'm going to go Debo there. Gibram Torres, we got Palmer, Devontae Smith, or Lazard for flex. Also starting Keenan, but I'm hesitant. Okay, I'm not really starting Devontae Smith. Green Bay's a pretty tough matchup through the air there. So I'm not in necessarily on him. Lazard, same thing. It's a tough situation there against Philadelphia, and I like Palmer. So, but I also don't necessarily love starting Palmer and Allen. So I get what you're saying. To be honest, though, I probably would. I think the floor for Keenan Allen's 10 points, pretty much. He's going to see that PPR action. And I feel like that's the same for Lazard. And Devontae Smith's even lower. So those are kind of your two, like, meh type, like those, okay, I got a safe floor. Could give me that upside, but it's more likely they hit the floor. Or I feel like Palmer's the upside play here. I think Palmer could be the main target again, kind of how we saw last week, kind of finds the end zone a couple more times. So I would, I know it's hesitant. I kind of feel the same way, but I almost feel like I would start Palmer and Allen. I mean, you're going to have almost 100% of the targets for the Chargers. I think it's going to be a pretty big game. So I'd go that route. If you're very hesitant and you really don't want to go that route, I'm going to pivot to Lazard. Okay. If that helps you. So I would probably start Palmer Allen. But if you want to pivot, go Lazard over Palmer. Tom, not a start sit question, but opinion question. Who is one player not easily startable rest of the season you are looking to win fantasy leagues? Kind of. Who is a player not easily startable rest of the season you are looking for? Are you looking for, like, Tom? Let's see if we can clarify this. Looking for like a sleeper type of guy, or I'm not 100% sure on the question. Exactly where you're going with that. If you're looking kind of like a sleeper route, okay, yeah, sleeper. It's probably going to come out of the running back position. I've kind of been on him. I don't know if he's kind of the mass feeling on him, but I really still like Antonio Gibson. I mean, I know he's been kind of not really maybe a sleeper, but a lot of people don't like him as much. I feel like he fell out of favor when Robinson came in, and I feel like he still hasn't lost that aura around him. So I feel like he could maybe be a guy that's kind of a sleeper-ish. I think he could have a pretty good stretch. I would say probably also Zeke, another guy that not a lot of people like, but unfortunately he gets used a lot. He scores a lot of touchdowns. I mean, outside of that, I feel like you could see somebody out of, the Baltimore backfield, Gus Edwards. I mean, J.K. Dobbins is still kind of like on that injury reserve, kind of on the fringe of coming back. He's a guy that if he comes back and he's actually healthy this time around, he could be a sleeper type play there. Let's see here. Demarcus Robinson, another guy that I like. He's a guy that's a little bit under the radar, possibly. Outside of that, I mean, probably those are the guys that I'm sitting with at the moment. Maybe. Sorry, I don't have a ton off the top of my head at the moment. But let's get the Lee start sit question here. Cooks for Burks. Any bump up for Michael Carter or James Robinson? Definitely a bump for Carter. Not a ton, but I think he firmly becomes a flex start and could possibly have RB2 upside there. And then, I dropped Brandon Cooks for Treylon Burks. Why don't we give it a week? Lee, give it a week for Cooks. I mean, I don't know if Burks will be available for you next week, but let's give it a week. I know we've said that Cooks' age is kind of caught up to him a little bit here, but let's see exactly what Kyle Allen's offense looks like. Let's see if it is a little bit more explosive in essence, where Cooks and Collins see a little bit of a bump just before we drop them. Just give them a week if it's possible. But I don't hate the move. I would also like Treylon Burks. I think he's kind of coming on. Probably has higher upside than Brandon Cooks. So I don't hate it. I might pump the brakes a sec just to see what Cooks looks like with Kyle Allen under center. Yoshi, pick 2, Rachaad White, Amari Cooper, Olave, and Lockett. Rachaad White's a lock for me. I think he has a pretty big day this week, so I'm going to go with Rachaad White. And then I'm going to go Olave as my other option. I do like Amari Cooper. I do. But with the weather, everything going on there, I'm going to actually bump him down a little bit in my rankings. I had him a little bit higher, but with the impending weather and everything that's going on there, I'm actually going to bump him down a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and give you that advice as well. I'm going to kind of avoid him. I'm going to go Olave over him. So I'm going to go White and Olave. Lee, you are welcome. Like I said, Lee, if you want, go ahead and make that move. Burks to Cooks feels lateral. You're shooting the upside out of Burks, which I think is higher. But I'm just interested. I like Brandon Cooks. I've liked him for a long time. I've always thought he's been a very reliable, viable receiver. We just kind of, at this point this season, it's kind of proven us that he isn't at that point at the moment. I just hope that there's maybe a little bit of a revival there from Kyle Allen because he's just been so consistent over the past few seasons. Let's see here. All right. Looks like we have no questions here. Let's check Twitter quick. We do have one from Ricky on Twitter. Pick 2 running backs: David Montgomery, Jeff Wilson, Kenneth Walker, P. Ryan, and Rachaad White. Oof, that is a deep room at the moment. Which wide receiver, Keenan Allen, Palmer, or Godwin? All right, Ricky. I am going to go Jeff Wilson as a lock for me. As one of your running backs. And then I'm going to go Ken Walker. I like the options of the other guys that are there. However, these two I think have the higher upside. Both could be top 12 options this week. The others, I don't know if we necessarily get that out of them. I think they're more RB2 type range. So I'm going to go with those two as far as your running back position goes. And then the wide receiver, I'm going to go. I'm going to go Keenan Allen. I think it's a little bit safer play there, Ricky. Let's see here. Chris has start DK or Montgomery and flex. I'm going to go DK. Raiders have been a little bit better against wide receivers as of late, and even on the season. But Dave Montgomery against the Jets with no real, it's Trevor Siemian. We can't say that there's no threat of the passing attack because we don't exactly know what that's going to look like. But I'm going to assume that their passing game is not overly great, especially against a good secondary. So I'm going to go DK. I think that there's a little bit more room for him to have the higher upside. I don't know if Montgomery gets the openings and the space to necessarily operate that well. I do think he could have a good day. I just don't think that he has a huge day like many of us would hope. So I'm going to go with DK there. Let's see here. We got from Actican. Where are you ranking Montgomery this week? Fields out and no Khalil Herbert. Okay, so some people would probably give him a bump because of these issues and feel like, hey, he's going to get that workhorse type of role. Definitely could see that. But the running back position, as far as the Jets go, they've been pretty stout against it. They're pretty middle of the pack, but they've only ever given up 2 running back 1 finishes so far through the first 11 weeks of the season. So I don't know if Montgomery cracks that and makes that 3. I think it's more likely he finishes in that RB2 range, kind of where you had him ranked to begin with. I think that he's a safe RB2, but I don't know if the threat of not having Fields and the lack of a passing game most likely almost maybe hinders him a little bit. I know we've seen him for years kind of take that role and just run with it, and he's been fine. But I don't know if that's going to be the case this week. I think he struggles a little bit more, and like I said, a mid to low end RB2, nothing crazy. So that's where I'm going to go with him. I'm not going to give him this huge bump just because of that. Sears has P Ryan or Ayuk this week, full PPR. I'm going to go Brandon Ayuk for you here. I have him ranked pretty high, actually, still. He's been pretty reliable and been hitting that upside with the touchdowns. I have him as a low end RB or wide receiver, too. No Lattimore again, most likely for the Saints. So for me, I think that that's going to be a good matchup for him. P Ryan, I do like. I just don't see the upside. I think Ayuk has more upside. Could be a huge game from him as well. I think P Ryan is safe. I don't think he has the upside that Ayuk has. So for me, that's where I'm going to go. Is Brandon Ayuk shoot the upside for you? But I guess here's if you wanted a safer play, it's P Ryan. I think he's a safe for 8 to 10 points. So it depends where you're going. But Ayuk, bigger game. Let's see here. Let's navigate the Twitter machine. Jets D or Chiefs D with no Stafford and Cup? I'm going to take the Jets D. I get it, no Stafford, no Cup, but the Jets are going to be starting Mike White. I want to say sorry. Let's rewind that. So the Jets have the Bears D, the Bears offense, which has Trevor Siemian, no Justin Fields. So that's the route I'm going to take. The Jets defense just a little bit better. I think that they can get the turnovers there on Trevor Siemian. And even at that, I think Nathan Peterman is their backup. So another guy that we all know that Nathan Peterman, me being a Bills fan living in Buffalo, I know Nathan Peterman quite well as far as the Nathan Peterman experiment. So I'm going to go the Jets D. I think there's a more likelihood you get a turnover out of them than you do out of Bryce Perkins and the Rams. I think they might shelter him a little bit more, he can use his legs a little more than Siemian and vice versa. So I'm going to go the Jets D. I think that they could have a better chance at some turnovers, possibly even a defensive touchdown today out of the Jets. So Ross, how do you feel about Higgins with Chase and Mixon out? You think they try to take him out of the game defensively? I think they try. I don't think they're going to succeed. The Tennessee defense very leaky to wide receivers. I think Higgins still has a good day. I have him as a top 12 option this week. Pretty safe start. And even at that point, they can't fully key in on Higgins. Tyler Boyd's a very good NFL wide receiver. They're going to have to worry about covering him. Hayden Hurst has done good things out of that tight end position, so they're going to have to at least kind of respect that some. And I think P Ryan's better than a lot of people give him credit for. I think that he fills in nicely for Mixon. So not as probably worrisome to our defense as Mixon would have been, but P Ryan still can get the job done, especially through the air and even on the ground. So I do think that Higgins has a good day still. I wouldn't get too worried thinking that he's going to have this bad game. Obviously it could happen, you know what I mean? We've seen it, teams adjust, but they just tend to be very leaky to wide receivers, that Tennessee defense. So Let's see here. Looks like we don't have any other questions at the moment. Here we got a couple more minutes. I'm going to go ahead. So every Friday, over at ftnfantasy.com, I post a fantasy football rankings versus the expert consensus. Short, quick little read, kind of just, a lot of charts. If you don't like to read a ton of words, who likes to read? So, but yeah, it's a nice little article. It kind of goes through, figures out at the point of Friday morning where we're at as far as our FTN consensus rankings compared to the ECR over at Fantasy Pros. Kind of gives you a look into our rankings a little bit, gives you a difference of where we have them ranked versus not. So, for example, I'll start quarterbacks. Kyler Murray, we have our FTN rankers having at 15 over the ECR, so it's 2 spots higher. A little guy we like a little bit more, as well as Ryan Tannehill, 23 over 25. A guy we like in this Cleveland matchup a little bit more. For example, then on the lesser end of it, we're a little bit less in on Tom Brady. This was before the weather news as well. Garoppolo, Rodgers, and Jackson, all just 1 spot lower than the ECR. Nothing crazy. Just guys that we might be a little bit less in on than the ECR's at. When it came to running backs, we had guys like Josh Jacobs, two spots higher. We have him as a top 3 option this week. James Conner is a guy that we believe in a little bit more. We have him at through top 15 option. Alvin Kamara as well. We have the top 15 option as opposed to the ECR. A little bit less is Miles Sanders, Antonio Gibson, Isaiah Pacheco, and even at that, Jeff Wilson, Rashad White, all guys that are consensus at FTN, not necessarily me, had a little bit lower than the rest of the ECR at the point of which was Friday morning. So again, at this point, it's a little bit face value, but that early on, you can kind of get an idea of these guys that our rankers like a little bit better if you don't have access to our ranks. And if you want to get access to our ranks, you can sign up for ftnfantasy.com. If you use the promo code POPE, P-O-P-E, it'll save you 20%. We also have another deal over there for 30% off as well. If you click on the website, it's there. So if you want to go that route as well, gives you that access, gives you access to advanced stats, pretty much everything you want. Start, sit tool, snaps tool. You get a splits tool where you can kind of break down and figure out and look into these guys a little bit deeper if you want to go that route. Tootsie Pop has a question. 1 running back and 1 for super flex. And we've got Michael Carter, Rashad White, Aaron Jones, Russell Wilson. So I'm still in on Aaron Jones this week. Philadelphia can be ran on. They're not the easiest team to run on, but we've seen it. We saw Washington gash them. We've seen other teams do that as well. It's not easy, but I do think that can happen here for the Aaron Jones here. They have given up 6 top 24 finishes to running backs. So I'm not overly worried. I think Aaron Jones, especially if you're playing in a PPR format, I think that you're going to see some work out of him as Rodgers kind of checks down to him if that pass rush gets there. So, and not only that, I think it's going to be scripted to get him the ball a little bit quicker out there. So I'm going to go there with him. And I'm going to probably go sorry, I'm just really thinking here. I'm probably going to go Michael Carter. Oh, man, this is tough. Michael Carter, I think, gets this huge, sort of a pretty big bump without James Robinson in there. So I think I'm going to go, man, I really like Rashad White, though, too. You're in a tough predicament here, Tootsie Pop. I'm going to go. All right, I can tell you I'm not going Russell Wilson. We'll just cross that one out. We'll get that out of there. Aaron Jones for me, and man, it's really Michael Carter, Rashad White's a coin flip. It depends on where you want to go. The matchup's a little bit easier for Michael Carter. The Bears have allowed 15 top 36 running backs, 6 RB1s, 6 RB2s. So they're pretty leaky against running backs, and Michael Carter with no James Robinson could have a pretty big day there. So I do like that option, but I think Rachaad White with a full workload could have a chance at a pretty big day as well. So I'm gonna say I lean Michael Carter. Man, I really like Rachaad White. Okay, so let's go with Aaron Jones. So I'll get your running back position out of the way, Tetsi Pop, and we'll go. No Russell Wilson in Superflex. Don't do it. Just don't fall for it. And then, man, this is really tough. I'm going to go Carter. I'm going to do it. Michael Carter. No J Rob. Go Michael Carter. Final answer. That's my final answer. Purple Cat. Hi there. I want to play Rachaad White full PPR, but don't want him to flop like Tony did last week. Thoughts? Could also play Sanders or Pacheco. I'd play Rachaad White. Tony got injured. I mean, that's a hard thing. Tony was in line to be a huge play last week against that defense. Unfortunately, he just had that hamstring injury. It's hard to predict that. So I'm comfortable playing Rachaad White, especially over Sanders and Pacheco. I'd do it. Obviously, I mean you know injuries, they're impossible to predict. You can do it the best you can and you best you want to try and say you can predict them, but it's almost impossible. So I'm going to go with Rachaad White. I don't just, Tony's was one of those cases, you get that injury. There's nothing we can really do about that. I think had he played, he would have had a pretty big game. So, all righty. Let's see here. Let's see if we got any questions on Twitter. Doesn't look like it. You are welcome, Purple Cat, and hopefully it plays out because honestly, I got Rachaad White fired up in a couple spots too, so I'm hoping that works out for both of us, as well as a lot of other people that I said to start Rachaad White. So that would be really good. Except for you, Tootsie Pop. Start Michael Carter. Do it. I promise you won't regret it. Oh, wow. 7 minutes ago, Adam Scheffner. So Trevor Siemian is no longer starting for the Bears. It's going to be Nathan Peterman. So, Chris, if you're still with us, definitely start the Jets defense. It looks like Nathan Peterman is going to be a go. Siemian will be the QB2, but he hurt his oblique during warmups. So David Montgomery is going to be the emergency quarterback. So, yeah, fire up the Jets defense if you are playing in any type of defensive special teams leagues and have that ability to get them quick. I would definitely try and get out there and get there. I think the Jets D could have a pretty big day. So that's where I'm going to go. Let's see here. That's got to do something. Let's see here. Any more questions on Twitter? Bob, hello. How are you? Let's see here. All right, let's roll back to our FTN rankings. So, player we like a little bit less at wide receiver was Palmer, Metcalf, Watson. Okay, we got a question. Good. Big Gums has Juju or Evans full PPR. I'm gonna go Juju. I'm gonna go Mike Evans. Nah, let's go Juju. Juju I like a little bit better this week. Evans, especially with the weather at the moment, has kind of been sliding down my rankings this morning, just because of where we're at here with the weather, the conditions there in Cleveland. I already had him as a low end wide receiver too. Juju against the Rams, pretty easy matchup in my opinion. The Rams have been very leaky to wide receivers. So far this season, they've actually allowed. Where is it? Let's see here. Sorry, pardon me. 6 wide receiver ones, which is 7th in the NFL currently. So they've allowed 6 top 12 finishes this year. So I'm going to go with Juju there. Clear weather, easier matchup. Cole Kmet or Foster Moreau. I'm going to go Moreau. Like I just mentioned, it seems like Nathan Peterman's starting for the Bears. I want nothing to do with any of those passing options. David Montgomery's becoming less and less appealing as well. So I'm going to go Foster Moreau. Seattle's a good matchup for tight ends. Don't think he's going to have a huge day, but I think he could be a tight end 1 this week. You know, that 10, 12 point range that tends to be the low end tight end 1s. Jim Bob, do I start Garrett Wilson, Josh Palmer, Evans, Devontae Smith, Hollywood Brown, Christian Watson, Paris Campbell, full PPR? Okay, so we need 3 of these guys. I'm going to go Josh Palmer is 1. I like him this week. I like Hollywood Brown. And then I'm probably going to go Garrett Wilson. I think those 3 are your I'm actually going to go Mike Evans. I'll go Palmer, Evans, and Brown. I like Garrett Wilson, but Evans has a better quarterback. I know the weather's going to be iffy, but I feel like he has a safer floor, equal upside as Garrett Wilson. Because we don't really know with Mike White who's going to be the target there. Additionally, with all the news coming out of Chicago with hardly anybody starting there, I do think that we could see a little bit more of a ground game from the Jets than the passing game. So I'm going to go Palmer, Evans, and Hollywood Brown there for you. Those would be my 3, Bob, Jimmy. We got another one on Twitter. Need help, Jeff Wilson or Najee this week? I'm leaning Wilson because the Colts D is pretty good against the run. Either way, I'd go Jeff Wilson. Just a better matchup. Houston's allowing the most points per game to running backs right now. Full workload. Najee's been very up and down. He's come on as of late the last couple of weeks. But I'm in on Jeff Wilson this week. I have him as a top 12 option. So that's where I'm at there. Let's see here. Doesn't look like we have many more questions on Twitter. Alrighty, looks like the questions have kind of dried up here. Don't really have much on Twitter as well. So, I'm gonna give it a couple more minutes. See if we get any more questions that roll in. All right, we got one more here from Limehead. Start Zay Jones, Mooney, or Deontay Johnson. I'm gonna go Zay Jones. Mooney with Nathan Peterman, not too exciting against that Jets defense. Deontay Johnson, not a terrible matchup. He just kind of seems like the third target in that offense as of late, if not the fourth behind Najee Harris. So I'm going to go Zay Jones. Second target, most likely in that offense. The Ravens can be passed on. I think that game could be a little bit higher scoring than most would think. So Limehead, I'll go Zay Jones there for you. So you're leaning too? Perfect. See, great minds. Think alike. Like it. Fire him up. Hopefully we get a good game out of him for you. Hayden's got Aaron Jones, Michael Carter, or Rashad White full PPR. So this one for me is, man, you have a tough choice. I'm gonna go Michael Carter. With all the news that's coming out, J-Rob being inactive, the Bears struggling with many options on the offensive side. Nathan Peterman's going to be the starter. I think that you're going to see a pretty heavy dosage of that run game from the Jets. So I'm going to go, Michael Carter there. Hayden. Alrighty. Seems like we've cooled down here on the last minute questions. So, one last time, if you like the show, tune in next week. I will be here 11 a.m. as per Eastern Standard Time. As well, if you want to catch in and ask any questions during the week, my handle is at PopesFFH on Twitter. Feel free to send those over at any point. Give me a follow, whatever you choose. You don't have to send the question. I'll answer it still. As well, check out ftnfantasy.com if you'd like to sign up. Promo code is POPE, POPE, saves you 20% off, gets you full access to advanced stats, start sit tools, rankings from our entire consensus, as well as it gives you, like I said, full access to our stats hub. Pretty great. Any advanced stat you could possibly need. It gets you a splits tool as well if you want to compare, for example, Jeff Wilson playing with the Dolphins versus San Francisco. You can go ahead and do that. Any type of research, anything you want to get through or do that has that ability as well. Additionally, we have pretty much a ton of articles. We have great ones from great writers from Jeff Radcliffe, Adam Pfeiffer, Chris Meany, Tyler Lochner. We have pretty much, you name it, we've got it. Like I said, 20% off using the promo code POPE, P-O-P-E. And until next week, 11 a.m. sharp again. Good luck. Hopefully all the advice pays off and you guys get yourself some wins out there this week. All right. Take care. Stay safe.